Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and we're now going to talk The Mandalorian and talk about the 5th episode of season 2 titled The Jedi. Now this will have spoilers contained in it, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, I advise you to stop watching now, go away, watch the episode and then come back to this review. Now this was of course the most anticipated episode of the season, as this was the first live action appearance of Ahsoka Tano, the massive fan favourite from the Clone Wars and Rebels series. We all know Ahsoka of course as the young Padawan from Anakin, and that she would be played by actress Rosario Dawson. We are of course coming off the pretty much thrilling conclusion of the Clone Wars 7th season, and we saw the resolution of Ahsoka's story and the Clone Wars arc. So when we heard that she would be making an appearance in The Mandalorian, so many fans are wondering, what would she look like, how would she move, what would be her backstory, what would be her background, and would there be any promise going forward. There have been various speculation about, will she get a standalone spin-off series in the future going ahead? How will Rosario perform the character? What will she sound like, and how will she interact with both the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda? So there was so much speculation about this and so many questions and answers that I think overall fans would like to be answered. So there was massive hype around this episode. Now, for my thoughts, I've probably got mixed feelings about it, if I'm being honest. I think if I focus much more on the episode to begin with, and the story of the episode, or indeed the lack of it, was that Ahsoka essentially was wanting to rescue the villagers who were being held captive by this ruthless tyrant in this massive stronghold fortress, and Ahsoka was trying to infiltrate the base single-handedly. And at the beginning of the episode, it was a terrific action set piece, very well done, very well executed, as we set the stage within this misty sepia toned planet. And then we see Ahsoka enter the fray, and she's taking out all of these soldiers single-handedly, and it looked beautiful at times. You know, the way that Ahsoka was moving, her twin white lightsabers, the sound of them, the way they glowed, the way that she was pirouetting and spinning around and making these huge leaps and taking out these soldiers one by one. It was fantastic to watch, and I think it was quite a thrilling start to the episode. And yeah, Rosario looked fantastic on it, and I think it satisfied a lot of fans, and me included, just getting that first appearance. And I think whenever they were writing this episode, they knew very well they had to open up with Ahsoka, and they had to open up with Ahsoka doing something spectacular, so they achieved that very well. Later on, Mandalorian comes to this planet because of course they're on a search for Ahsoka. He comes across the fortress. They try to strike a bargain with him where if he kills Ahsoka, then they will give him a blade made out of Beskar steel, and as we all know, the Beskar steel is very powerful, almost impenetrable, and cannot be damaged, and it's part of the Mandalorian's armor, of course. So he seemingly agrees to the bargain, but when he comes across Ahsoka later on in another terrific, if brief, encounter between the two. Again, I love the encounter, the fight that they have, where Ahsoka is striking him down and the Beskar armor is seemingly able to withhold the lightsabers, and I found that a bit strange because I didn't think it was good enough to do that. We normally associate the energy from the lightsabers being able to penetrate almost any surface, so the fact that he was able to block her lightsaber strikes was very interesting, but it was still very exciting to watch. And I love the choreography as well, where he uses his flamethrower on her cloak and she spins away. It was fantastic again, and very brief encounter, but I didn't mind that. I don't think we needed a full-on epic fight sequence between the two, but they come together and he establishes that they've been looking for Ahsoka and that the tyrants wanted to strike a bargain with her to kill her. So they strike a deal. If Mandalorian helps Ahsoka to rescue the villagers, then Ahsoka will help train Baby Yoda. And then we get, for me, was probably the disappointing element of the episode, where we get a very prolonged and protracted scene where we see that Ahsoka is trying to see the Force within Baby Yoda, by moving this stone towards him and getting him to try and throw it back, but he doesn't, because he doesn't have the same connection with her as what he does with the Mandalorian. And we get some backstory about how he was one of the young Jedi within the temples after the fallout from the Clone Wars and the Order 66, and he managed to escape, and he had his memory to an extent wiped out. So he's a lot older than what we think, so he's not necessarily the Baby Yoda that we've always associated throughout the show. And then we get the other revelation that his name is actually Gregor, I think. So again, I think that's wiped away a lot of the mystery. Will be interesting to see how fans react to that, because we all know the Baby Yoda association has been one of the biggest elements, if not the biggest elements, of this entire show. So now he's no longer Baby Yoda. So will fans call him that, or will they refer to him as his proper name now? So like I said, it just felt this scene was prolonged for too long. It didn't really add anything, because we already knew that Baby Yoda and Mandalorian already had a strong connection. That's been the founding basis for the entire series. So we didn't really need another scene to tell us that. Now, the reason why I was disappointed in this part of the show, because aesthetically, Ahsoka looked amazing. This is probably as good as a live action representation of the character as I think what fans could have hoped for. And Rosario, she looked terrific in it. And I've mentioned before, the terms and the way that Ahsoka moved and the way that she used her lightsabers, all fantastic. But for me, what was lacking was the character of Ahsoka. Now, she didn't seem to have a lot of lines of dialogue, and when she did, they just felt a bit lifeless. We refer back to Ahsoka from Clone Wars, and she had that very lively, very spunky, rebellious kind of personality. Now, I do understand, of course, that this is a lot more of an older, mature Ahsoka that's been through the whole tribulations of the fallout of the Clone Wars. I understand that. So, you would get a lot more of a mature, wise personality. But still, I think I just wanted a bit more liveliness, a bit more energy, vitality from her personality, and we didn't quite get that. And I don't think it was necessarily a fault of Rosario in terms of her performance. I just think it was the way that the character was written. There wasn't a lot of spark to her character, and I just wanted a bit more from her in that aspect. And I felt this scene was the perfect opportunity to do that. And another aspect I was disappointed in is that we didn't really get much in the way of background of Ahsoka. You know, what has she been doing? Now, if you've watched Clone Wars or the Rebels, you know how both of those shows ended. Of course, Clone Wars, she ended up leaving a lightsaber and going her own way, and then in Rebels, of course, she went away with, I think it was Sabrine Wren at the end of that conclusion, and they were wondering what happened to Urza as well at the end of Rebels. So I was hoping we would get some sort of reference. You know, did she meet up again with Urza? What has she been doing since then? Has she been training? Has she been developing her skills? Did she meet up with a further resistance? Was she trying to wipe out the remaining parts of the Empire? Did she possibly meet up again with Obi-Wan? I wanted some more reflection or reference to Anakin and the fallout of the Clone Wars and everything that she's lost. What about Rex? Did she come across Rex again? Because we know that they did meet up again in Rebels. So I just wanted a bit more reference to the backstory of Ahsoka and what she's been doing. But we never got any of that. She might as well have just been just a character. Now, people may counter this and say, well, it is a Mandalorian show. It's not an extension of Clone Wars or Rebels. And this was the best way to introduce non-fans to the character of Ahsoka by just having her kind of be this standalone character, not be boggled down by too much exposition. But I think after all the hype, after all the anticipation and seeing what Ahsoka would be like in live action, I think it would have been nice of them to just add a bit more to it. You didn't have to go full on exposition. You didn't have to waste half an episode. But I think this scene in particular, it would have been far more valuable to get some exposition and backstory and references to the previous series or previous movies, just to again deepen into that mythology, deepen into that lore of Star Wars. I think that would have been a lot more valuable than just showing Baby or Yoda or Grigor or whatever his name is now, just connecting the rock and establishing the fact that he's heavily connected with the Mandalorian, which we knew already. So I just think it was a bit of a wasted scene. But we move on again, and both of Ahsoka and Mandalorian, they take out the fortress and the tyrants. Again, good action scenes on here. We get a pretty decent fight between the tyrant and Ahsoka. Again, I queried this a bit as well, because we assume that Ahsoka's skills have enhanced greatly since the end of Clone Wars and Rebels. So the fact that this tyrant, we never got much background into how highly skilled the warrior she was. Yes, she had this spear which was made of the Beskar steel, but at the end of the day, I would have envisaged that Ahsoka would be more than strong enough to really take her out quite quickly. If we go back to Clone Wars, again, Ahsoka was skilled enough to best Darth Maul, a very controversial event of that season. But you'd like to think her skills would have evolved exponentially since that development. So surely she should be able to take out this person single-handedly. But they had to, I guess, make out a fight sequence to give the episode an exciting climax. So she defeats her, and then we get an Easter egg reference where she names drops Admiral Thrawn and that she's looking for him. Now again, this is mixed feelings, because again, if you are a Star Wars fan and you're into the extended universe, then yes, you'll be very excited. What will this promise for the future? But of course, if you don't know anything about the expanded universe, you won't have a clue who Thrawn is. So this is something, going back to my previous point, where you could have established that earlier on, and maybe it would have carried more weight before, right? We could have got some reference to Thrawn and why is she looking for him. It would have meant a bit more to me than just dropping it in there at the end, where it felt pretty insignificant. So at the end, they decide to hand over the Beskar blade to the Mandalorian, and he goes away with Baby Yoda to have further adventures, and then Ahsoka just walks away. So in terms of the narrative, it was pretty much, again, bare bones storytelling from the Mandalorian, and which was a bit disappointing after we got the two terrific episodes, the High-Risk and the Siege, where we were just starting to build an overall narrative and a substantial serialized story, which I've said that this series always needs. So in terms of the representation, the interpretation of Ahsoka, I think it was visually stunning. She looked fantastic. Rosario, she looked great in the role, but I just think it was lacking a bit of character, and I think it was, this whole episode was lacking a bit in storyline. I mean, it was one of the longest episodes of the series. It ran, I think, close to 50 minutes, but we could argue that this could have been easily 35 minutes, because there just wasn't enough there in terms of story to warrant the length. And when you don't have enough story, you can really feel the episode drag its feet a bit, and it just dragged itself at times and prolonged scenes in the future. But still, besides that, we've got still a lot of promise. Again, who is this other Jedi that they now have to find? And that was another issue I had, because they've spent all this time and energy looking for Ahsoka, and then once they find Ahsoka, they're just told, right, they have to go to another planet and find another Jedi temple, where Baby Yoda has to just sit there and hope another Jedi finds him and hope to rediscover his powers. Again, that just felt very lightweight and a bit of a cheat. You know, the fact that they obviously want to make this a Mandalorian show and not an Ahsoka show, so it just felt a bit, I don't know, shortchanged. I think you just wanted a bit more from that development. But who will she find, or who will they find when they come across another Jedi, if they do? So many people have theorized, will it be Luke? I don't think so at this stage. I think the kind of Luke Skywalker story has been done. Some people have theorized Mace Windu, maybe he survived his death at the hands of Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith. I doubt it will be that, but a much more of a, I think, reasonable or plausible theory will be he will come across Ezra, who of course had the Jedi powers in Rebels, and that would be a much more of a plausible theory. And of course they can do pretty much what they want with the character. There's no reference of Ezra in the sequel trilogy or the original trilogy, so that gives them a bit more leeway. If they do want them to encounter Ezra later on within the series, then they can do that quite easily and make the connection that way. So that, what I think, is the most likely situation if they are to come across another Jedi. I don't think it's going to be Obi-Wan. Even though the fact that Obi-Wan's got his own series, I can't see that at the moment. But we will wait and see what happens in the future. So again, it wasn't a bad episode. It wasn't a terrible episode. I just think after the 2 previous episodes, which started to build a substantial plot for the overall season, this felt a bit disappointing, especially because there was so much anticipation following the appearance of Ahsoka. So aesthetically, she looked stunning. Rosario looked amazing in the role. And maybe we will eventually get a standalone Ahsoka spin-off series. And if we do, then hopefully then we can delve more into what she's been up to and her previous back history following the end of Rebels. But I think overall on this episode, not a bad episode, not the strongest of the season, but very good to see a live action version of Ahsoka, and I'm sure that got many fans excited, and it will be very good to see where we see her progress in the future series going ahead. So those are my thoughts on the Mandalorian, the Jedi episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of the overall season so far? Do you think it's very good? Do you think it's standard? Do you think it's an improvement of the first season? What were your thoughts on Ahsoka's live action appearance? Was it everything you were hoping for following those years of speculation and fan art that we used to see online all the time? Did you think it was lacking in terms of her character and personality? And would you have liked to see more references and backstory in terms of the Clone Wars, Rebels, and maybe more references to Anakin? So let me know what you think in the comments below. Those are my thoughts on The Mandalorian and the first live action appearance of Ahsoka. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.